If you don't use a particular connection, it withers and dies. The brain is very efficient that way. There's only so much blood, there's only so much nourishment, so it's only going to nourish and support the circuits that we're using. By one estimate, we lose about 20 billion a day. Sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot when you're looking at the possibility of 100, or rather 1,000 trillion. One more concept, and I'll get off of neurons, and that's the issue of synaptic strength. And it's really key to understanding neuroplasticity. When two connected neurons are simultaneously active a good deal of the time, the synapse itself changes in such a way that makes the activation of one cell more likely to cause the other cell to fire. What happens here chemically is beyond the scope of this talk, but just understand that cells that fire together wire together. A good analogy for that is a dirt road in the country. We had deep ruts worn by generations of wagon traffic. That's the concept of synaptic strength. The more we use a particular neural net, the stronger it becomes. So how do we learn? Because that's the only area of the brain I'm going to go into. I'm not going to talk about how we compute things and all that stuff. The learning process. The first step in memory formation is called encoding. It's a biological process rooted in the senses, and it begins with perception. Think about meeting your first crush, okay? You had visual perceptions, their appearance, their smile, their eye color, the tilt of their head. You had auditory perceptions, the sound of their laughter, the sound of their voice. You had the smell of perfume or aftershave. And you may have felt the touch of their hand when it brushed against your arm. These different perceptions traveled along neural pathways from different regions of your brain to a portion of your brain called the hippocampus. In the hippocampus, they were integrated as they occurred and became one single experience. Your experience of that particular person. Imaging studies indicate that the hippocampus, along with another part of the brain called the frontal cortex, is responsible for analyzing all of these various sensory inputs and deciding whether or not they're worth remembering. New information, what you're hearing right now, is going into your short-term memory. If we decide that the information or experience is particularly important, or it's repeated a number of times, or if we're really paying attention, it may become part of our long-term memories. We forge long-term memories and learn new habits and skills by strengthening neural connections. This happens primarily through repetition, trauma, or reward. If we perform a task or recall some information that causes groups of connected neurons to fire in concert, it strengthens the connections between these neurons, and they become what we call declarative memory. That's the first step beyond short-term memory. Declarative memory is the memory that we use for conscious decision-making. Okay? when we're doing our checkbooks or deciding what restaurant to eat at, or we remember the way home, so on and so forth. These are items in our declarative memory, conscious decision-making. If we strengthen them enough, these pathways turn into what we call working or habit memory. We can, at that point, recall information or perform certain tasks without the intervention or collaboration of our conscious mind. That's what we call habit. Practice makes permanent. The more times a network is stimulated, the stronger and more efficient it becomes. And I keep repeating that in different ways because it's the most important concept that I really have this morning. An analogy for habit memory would be something like, arguably the hardest thing to do in all of sports is hit a major league pitcher. Well, a 300 hitter doesn't get up there and start thinking about what muscles he's going to contract, in what order and to what degree to hit the pitch that's coming. No, he has about a millisecond to make up his mind, and well-developed neural pathways do the rest. And it's the same thing with a concert pianist. He doesn't think, or she doesn't think about her finger movements when she's playing a piece she's practiced her whole life. She sits down and does it. That's habit memory. We open the refrigerator when we're hungry. Many recent studies show that another tool called mindfulness can also lead quickly to the formation of declarative habit memory. Simply paying attention and being present to our lives is what I'm talking about. Chopping wood when you're chopping wood, doing the dishes when you're doing dishes, paying attention. And how you train yourself to do that, there's many different ways to do that. But the point is, if we learn to do that, pay attention, perhaps we can remember where we put our car keys the night before. If we have a new experience or hear novel information, neuroplasticity allows either an alteration to the structure of already existing connections between neurons, or forms brand new connections. Either way, the brain is remolded to take in the new data and, if useful, retain it. Certain events can imprint permanent memories simply by their magnitude and the effects they have on our lives and on our emotions. You were alive in Pearl Harbor, the Kennedy assassination, 9/11. You pretty much know where you were when you heard that, and those events are pretty much burned into your permanent memory. Few of us, however, can remember where we were, or what we did the day before, unless it was equally as traumatic. Now we have the reward-driven learning process. We reproduce, we defend ourselves, we protect our young, and perform other important functions that are key to our survival and the survival of our species. This area of human behavior is controlled by a portion of the brain that Dave talked about a couple of weeks ago, the primitive area of our brain, the reptile brain, if you prefer. It's the center of what neurologists call the reward pathway, also referred to as the limbic system. It organizes the behaviors that are life-sustaining, provides some tools necessary to take the desired actions, and rewards us with pleasure when we do. It's triggered by any pleasurable activity. Okay, everything from a chocolate chip cookie to sex, to anything else that we enjoy. The information, the circumstances are encoded. The circumstances that led to the pleasure are encoded so that we can repeat the behavior and repeat the reward. A critical component of the system is a neurotransmitter called dopamine. I'm not going to go any deeper into it than that. It's released from neurons in our reward system circuits, and it functions as a neurotransmitter. It heightens our awareness and focuses our attention. Think about losing a child in the mall, okay? It just, your attention was diverted for just a second by a clerk or whatever, the kid runs off, and you panic, okay? Your body goes into, or your brain goes into a pattern matching mode. You're afraid for your child. You rush out into the mall, and a glimpse of a wisp of hair, a tilt of a head, a tiny corner of a cap seen 50 yards away, and you know that's your kid. Okay, that's pattern matching. That's driven by the chemicals in the brain that are released by the limbic system that's responsible for a lot of our very basic activities. Unfortunately, well, there's no system that'll drive the formation of new connections or strengthen existing ones faster than the limbic system. And unfortunately, it's the system that's hijacked by addiction. Okay, that's the part of the brain and the learning mechanism of addiction. It starts with a pleasurable experience, and it's repeated in certain people for certain reasons beyond the scope of this discussion. But that's the system that's hijacked by addiction. The executive center of the brain provides motivation, rationalization, and the activities of other brain areas necessary to repeat the pleasurable experience. The keys there are motivation and rationalization. We can rationalize that piece of chocolate cake. Okay, we can rationalize that chocolate chip cookie. That is, I wouldn't trivialize addiction to say that it's like that, but it's that same kind of thing. It's that rationalization that goes on. It's very, very difficult to overcome. So how do we change our behaviors? Assuming that we've formed habits that we don't like, and they could be anything. They could be something that we do that annoys our spouse. It could be something we do that annoys the person that employs us. It doesn't matter what it is. But let's say we have habits that we want to change. First of all, the brain is a one-way street. As I mentioned, we prune 20 billion synapses a day in areas of the brain that aren't used. We forget people, places, and things. We lose skills, some of which we acquire with a great deal of effort. We change habits. We change our likes, dislikes, political parties. We adapt new ways of doing things, discarding the old. In other words, if we are, in fact, the sum of our experiences, we become different people over time. It's all the result of neuroplasticity. I'm a different man than I was 20 years ago. Totally different. I've changed almost everything there is to change about myself. Okay? Many of you have. I'm not claiming any sort of uniqueness here. We all change in minor ways and major ways. All I'm trying to do this morning is perhaps give you a clue to how you can focus that and do that, wanting to do it. uh,